Hi, welcome to this STAIR tailored video. My name is Samantha Boss, and I'm from the University of Texas at Austin. Today, we're here to look at student-focused assessment for the synchronous and asynchronous mathematics learner. This video is a little bit different. We're going to listen to some tips from a previous webinar that the Project STAIR team made, and we're going to focus on specifically how we can adjust our assessments in the virtual setting. So we're going to listen to this section, which is done by Tessa Arsenault from the University of Texas as well, and I'm going to let her take it away.
Before we get started on our suggestions, I want to recommend that you check out the assessment publisher websites for the assessments you use. Right now, many assessment publishers have specific guidelines for conducting their assessments virtually. I recommend that you check them out before assessing. The first tip for assessing in the virtual classroom is to know your students' IEP accommodations. For virtual assessments, teachers must keep in mind how to appropriately support accessibility, accommodations, and equity. In this section, we discuss supporting accommodations. Teachers need to ensure that they are meeting the needs of students with IEPs. Teachers need to reference the IEP of each student with an IEP to ensure that all appropriate accommodations are met for each assessment. The accommodations in a student's IEP have been created by the IEP team to best fit the strengths and needs of that particular student. To ensure that all accommodations are in place, this may take collaboration between the general education teachers, the special education teacher, other building specialists, guardians, and the student. Providing and supporting access to accommodations will vary based on the student. While a child may be independent in utilizing one accommodation, they may need more support in taking advantage of another accommodation. Teachers need to consider assistive technology, ADA accessibility, executive function supports, along with any other appropriate accommodations. Teachers need to ensure that students who need assistive technology have it available at home and know how to access it. For example, teachers need to make sure that the digital content has various technology supports, such as built-in speech-to-text or text-to-speech. Additionally, teachers need to ensure that they are considering ADA accessibility when appropriate. Are the students with physical disabilities able to take the assessment at home? Such students need to have access to the full range of test-taking accommodations they would have had taken an assessment in school. Last, teachers need to make sure that the demands of executive functioning skills are supported during the virtual assessment. Tip number 2 is awareness of inequities. Again, teachers need to consider accessibility, accommodations, and equity when conducting assessments in the virtual classroom. In this section, we consider accessibility and equity. Just like when we're in the school building, in the virtual classroom, not all students have access to the same resources. Teachers must keep this in mind when making decisions for assessments. When teachers are considering accessibility, there are a few questions to ask before proceeding to the assessment. Do all students have sufficient technology capacity? For example, internet bandwidth and a computer or laptop that meets the needs for completing the assessments. Are students familiar with the online testing platform with remote proctoring? And can students operate the technology independently? Teachers must also consider comparability in results. Are results obtained from an at-home test administration and remote proctoring comparable to those from a traditional in-school test administrations? Are there variations due to the platform or other factors not related to the student understanding of the content? Tip number 3 is to know your purpose for assessing. The purpose of the assessments needs to be clear to the teacher, the family, and the students. The focus of virtual assessments should be on formative assessments. Formative assessments are valuable for finding out more about the student's learning and how to support their growth. With formative assessments, you'll be able to monitor student progress and make changes to the curriculum based on student needs. Formative assessments have a clear and straightforward purpose for virtual assessments. It is also valuable to use self-assessment during remote learning to encourage students to self-monitor their growth. This can generate student engagement in their own learning progress. The purpose of virtual assessment should not be summative accountability. With remote learning, summative assessments to evaluate student learning at the end of a unit are not going to benefit the student or provide the teacher with useful information. Last of all, teachers need to consider security around online assessments. Safeguards need to be in place to prevent testing improprieties, such as cheating, by the students and their guardians, and test question sharing. Teachers can work to decrease cheating by making the purpose of the assessment clear to the families and the students. If families and students know that the purpose of assessment is primarily to support student learning, the likelihood of cheating may decrease. Cheating most often happens under high-stakes environments. So if the stakes are low, which we recommend here, cheating should be less likely to happen. Tip number 4 is preparedness and communication are key. Clarity and repetition are essential for virtual assessments. Direct teacher-to-family communication is a key driver for quality of data. Before the assessments, it is the teacher's responsibility to get ahead of the technology hurdles. The teacher should practice using the assessment platform before providing the assessment. The teacher should also make it available to the students and families so they can practice using the assessment platform before taking the assessment. It is also important that teachers have a communication plan for students and families before, during, and after the assessments. Teachers need to set up a standard for collaboration around the assessment with families and students. This can be through email, messaging, Google Classroom, ClassDojo, or another online communication system. Whatever system a teacher uses, it must be clear, consistent, and a reliable form for communication. Families and students should be able to have resources available and a clear way for them to ask informal questions. Teachers should also set up a space for information about the assessment. This may include how-to videos or step-by-step written instructions about the assessment procedures. It will be more accessible to families if they can receive all of this information and the information about the purpose of the assessment from the same place. Consistency and simplicity is very important for easing the transition to online assessments.
Thanks, Tessa, for that really great information. So just to give you a little bit more details on the webinar that clip came from, it was titled The Webinar Series Implementing DBI with a Focus on Mathematics During COVID-19 Restrictions. It was a 3-part webinar in which we looked at how to implement DBI, how to assess, and then how to implement mathematics instruction in these COVID times, these weird COVID times. The webinar was put on by the National Center of Intensive Intervention, and I'll be sure to include links to that website and that webinar in the description below. The project was also part of the American Institute for Research, and we want to acknowledge their contribution in making this entire webinar series possible. So this Project STAIR tailored video is just one of many available on our website. We hope you subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as follow us on Twitter. Be sure to check out the other 2 virtual tips that came from the webinar series, as well as feel free to check out the webinar series themselves, which includes handouts and tools for implementing those strategies in your classroom. Thanks again for watching the STAIR tailored video. Hope to see you soon. Thanks.